What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over Acts of Vengeance. Acts of Vengeance is this massive crossover that was given to us back in 1989 to 1990 by Marvel Comics. Now, the whole point of this event was to see our heroes going up against characters they don't usually fight against. So, for example, you have Spider-Man fighting against Magneto, and the list goes on. Now, when it came to Acts of Vengeance, the whole event came together because of Loki. You see, when it came to Loki, he had realized that the reason why the villains are always losing to the same heroes over and over and over again, because those same villains keep going after the same heroes over and over again. And he says, why don't we try to go after different characters we don't usually fight against? Like Magneto, why not try to go after Spider-Man? Or, hey, Tiger Shark, why not try to go after Wolverine? Now, when it came to Loki in his whole Acts of Vengeance operation, he had an inner circle run the whole entire operation for him. And that would be Dr. Doom, the Kingpin, the Wizard, the Mandarin, the Red Skull, Magneto. Those characters kind of ran the whole entire operation. Now, when it came to Loki, he didn't appear in front of them as Loki, but he appeared as somebody else who had these magical powers, but he was there to serve them, to help them. But in reality, he was using them to hopefully achieve his goal. Now, like I said earlier, when it comes to Acts of Vengeance, it was a massive crossover that was given to us by Marvel Comics. But the way it was told to us was done in team books or solo character books. So, for example, The Amazing Spider-Man or The Avengers or The West Coast Avengers. And those chapters would help us learn more and more about what's happening in Acts of Vengeance. Now, those chapters would solely focus on those characters in their own books. And so today's video is going to be about the Fantastic Four. Now, we had already covered the first chapter for their Acts of Vengeance story arc, but now we're going to cover the second and third story arc, where you now have the Fantastic Four going up against, well, Congress. You see, around this time in Marvel Comics, you had the heroes dealing with a new law that basically said that if you are going to be a hero or somebody with powers, you're going to have to register in this country and basically work for the government. And so when it came to Reed Richards and the rest of the Fantastic Four, they felt like they had to go to Congress and have a conversation to basically say why this is a bad idea, which honestly it is. But it is 2 chapters. You're going to see a lot of different points being brought up in just 2 books to say why it is bad to try to control superheroes and what could it mean for the future of the country. Now, before we have Reed Richards being able to get up and share his beliefs of this new law, we have other characters stepping up and sharing their beliefs about this new law. So, for example, you have a guy who's part of the NRA, and he says, what we're trying to do right now is going to be the first step into banning powers altogether. And we do not have the right to ban those powers. And he says, listen, if you guys give us guns to use for fun or possibly protection, then why can't we allow heroes to use their powers for fun or protection? Their powers are there to help them and to help others. And so for him, he says, that's your problem right there. If you ban their powers, then most likely they can no longer help people where their powers will be really great in those different kinds of situations. But after he shares his beliefs, he sits down just like that. But then you have everyone freak out. And the reason why, because they got word that Apocalypse was flying over the area and they know how powerful he truly is. And so when it comes to our heroes, once they got word that Apocalypse was nearby, you had the Fantastic Four run over to somewhere else in the building to change clothes into their Fantastic Four outfits, just in case they have to battle against Apocalypse. But once they got word that he was just flying over and he went somewhere else, they changed back into their regular clothes to rejoin the session. Now, this section right here is going to be very important down the road in this book. But now I want to shift your focus over to a small device. Now, this small device has been following the Fantastic Four all the way from New York over to Washington, D.C. Now, this small device is going to be very important for today's video, and here is the reason why. So the small device goes off, and out of nowhere, you have a random character trying to assassinate the Fantastic Four. Now, his name is Ramrod, but he's like a D-list character. Now, this is continuing a trend we saw in the first chapter of the story arc in our last video for the Fantastic Four. In that video, you had our heroes be attacked by some random D-list characters. Now, like I said earlier, when it came to acts of vengeance, it's all about the idea of seeing our heroes go up against new characters they don't usually fight against. But for our team here, they're going up against characters who are D-list characters, people they can take out so easily. And when it comes to Ramrod, when he tries to assassinate the Fantastic Four, well, unfortunately, he trips over his own feet, which then leads into him getting knocked out by that fall. And so then you have our heroes just take him away. Really, the officers take him away. But you have our heroes say, we have no idea who that guy was, but like, at least he's gone now. But now we have Henry Gyrus step up to speak on his belief in this new law. Now, when it comes to Henry, he is a problem. This man truly hates mutants and was actually part of Project Wide Awake. But I'm not going to speak much about that. Just know it was another attack on the mutant race. But there was a time where he was in charge of the Avengers and did a horrible job at that. Now, when it comes to Henry, he believes this new law should go into effect because at least the government can control the heroes before it could possibly get out of hand if something happens. Now, for Henry, this law is only for people who got their powers from accidents, not mutants who were born with their abilities. But he basically says they should use the draft of the law to see how it works. The draft says only men need to register, not women nor children. But also it was to guide everyone into a more controlled state when it comes to heroes rather than having them run freely. Also, he is trying to put in a position where he will be in charge of all the heroes. But now it's time for Reed Richards to speak. Now, when he gets up there, unfortunately, that is the moment where you have two more D-list characters try their best to assassinate the Fantastic Four. That would be Plant Man and Quill. Again, two D-list characters, but those two D-list characters are easily taken out by each other. Now, here's the thing. You didn't have the congressman wondering if Reed Richards and the rest of the Fantastic Four are doing this on purpose, because before they had arrived, this entire room was quiet. There was no issues at all. But after our heroes had arrived, now you had three different D-list characters trying to assassinate the Fantastic Four. And so they believe that Reed is most likely involved in some kind of way. But then they allowed the Fantastic Four to speak. Now, first is Reed. When it comes to Reed, this man came prepared. He brought all these different kinds of reports to show how the Fantastic Four have helped out mankind over the years and why they are needed. Now, when it comes to the congressmen, they do ask the other members of the Fantastic Four. So, for example, Susan, they ask her about their son, Franklin Richards. Now, at this point in Marvel Comics, Franklin is a mutant that got retconned way down the road. But she says she is worried about the other law that's trying to go into effect that would affect the mutants, saying that if you are a mutant, you have to register. And she feels like it's not fair for her son having to be forced to work for the government in some kind of way down the road. Now, for the Human Torch, he says this law could be good, but then you have to realize that you couldn't get characters like Dr. Doom to register, or possibly other characters who are just as powerful as Doom. And for Ben Grimm, it was really more of like, if you believe that your new law will help you control superpower beings, you're in the wrong, because it's like saying having gun control. Do you really believe with gun control that guns be better controlled in this country? Most likely not. And so you have our heroes being able to share what their beliefs are in this new law. Now, something else I should also mention is that around this time in the Fantastic Four, they were really more the Fantastic Five, because you also had She-Thing, which by this point in Marvel Comics, she had dropped that name and began to call herself Miss Marvel once again. And her name was Sharon Ventura, who was a close girlfriend of Ben Grimm, but unfortunately was hit with cosmic rays, and then she was changed into She-Thing. Now, she's also there with the rest of the team as they're trying to talk to congressmen, but she realized that there's other men in the crowd right now who look very suspicious, and of course it's more D-list characters. And guys, when I say D-list characters, I mean truly D-list characters, like the Flying Tiger, Thunderball, the Eel, Mad Dog, and Vanisher. Now, you do have our heroes being able to take down all these different D-list characters, but after doing that, you have Reed realize what is making these characters trying to assassinate the Fantastic Four, that small device I mentioned earlier. And so you have Reed grab it and turn it off. But then it leads into other people in the room believing that Reed Richards and the Fantastic Four are at fault for what's been happening in this room. They believe our heroes are bringing these bad guys here on purpose. And so as we dive into the next chapter for the Fantastic Four, we do pick up with Reed Richards and the rest of the team now being accused for being the ones who had brought the bad guys here to this meeting. Now, while you have our heroes being accused, you didn't have the press say, let's ask a few people who may live near the Fantastic Four and see how they truly feel about this team. Now, this gives us a great example of how the public feels about the superhero community, because you do have some folks who love the idea of having the heroes around, but you also have some folks who hate the idea of having the heroes around. Now, there are other opinions as well, but it really shows that the public is very, divided when it comes to what should be done when it comes to the heroes. Now, when it comes to Reed, he says, listen, if I was the one who had created this device, I would make sure that this device was undetectable, that you nor anyone else in this room would be able to actually find it, which means this was not done by me. And also, I would have used better stuff to create a better device. Now, you did have Reed continue on to say that when it comes to superheroes, it's not really easy for them. He says, listen, most of the heroes in the superhero community, they have a full-time job. And really, their superhero life is their second full-time job. They're trying to balance both, and here's the catch though, that second full-time job does not pay them at all. Most of the heroes are not getting paid for what they do for this world. Now, you did have Reed say also to realize that we live in a world where supervillains is just a natural thing, that no matter what, if heroes were there or not, we would have bad guys popping up left and right. But then you have Reed say, you also have to realize that we're not just fighting against characters from Earth. We're also fighting against characters from other planets, cosmic beings who could easily wipe us out. And that is why we need superheroes, but also why we need superheroes to work freely to stop attacks like those. And so while you have Reed trying to continue on with his reasoning, well, that is when he's interrupted by the people of Congress, saying like, hey, we just got word that outside the building, there's more D-list characters who are trying to attack the place. Now, you have She-Thing and also Ben Graham go outside to handle that situation. Now, while doing that, you have Reed and Sue continue on. But before they do, you have Sue bring up a good point. She says, what if that device that you turned off earlier is also controlling the different members of Congress as well? But then you have Reed bring up another good point. He says, listen, here is the reason why you guys cannot be in control of the superheroes. And he goes back over to Henry Gyrich. He says, Henry was in charge of the Avengers, but he did a horrible job when he had that position. And so that is Reed's point right there. He says, if we allow the government to be in charge of superheroes, let's say Galactus comes, but then you guys say, you know what? We are only going to send a few heroes after Galactus. But what if those heroes are not the right ones to handle that kind of situation? But we have no choice because you guys are in control. And that goes back to Reed's main point, that you guys don't have experience when it comes to handling all these different kinds of situations with heroes. And so as Reed's saying, that's why you guys cannot be in charge of us at all. But now that same device once again goes off. But this time you now have just regular people also trying to attack the Fantastic Four. And so you have Reed realize that this device is controlling the minds of not just the bad guys, but also the innocent people in this meeting as well. This device was used as a way to help somebody to hopefully get the law into effect. But once you have Reed being able to turn off the device, everyone turns back to normal. But they all forget what exactly happened in this room. And matter of fact, when you have Reed and Sue go outside to see She-Thing and Ben Graham, they were able to stop the other bad guys outside the building. But they also forgot what had exactly happened a moment ago. And that shows the device is controlling their minds and making them attack the Fantastic Four. But once you have the device turned off, they don't remember anything happening at all. But once you have the meeting being able to continue, it goes back to Reed saying, I still have a few more problems with this law. And you have Reed say, here's my first point right here. So you're saying that if we have superpowers, we have to basically go out of our way and work for the government. Now, at first, you were saying superheroes, but it seems like to me, you also mean people who may have powers, but not using their powers to be heroes, but they still have to register. Why is that fair? But on top of that, what if somebody out there does not know they have abilities, but then you find out and then you got to force them to register? How is that okay at all? And then on top of that, the word mutant. Now for us, that means they have the X gene. But what if somebody was born differently, but also does not have the X gene? Are they also classified as a mutant? And on top of that, they also have to work for the government? And so when it came to Reed, he was able to create a device that scans different people in the room. He says, listen, some of you guys, your genetics are not as normal as you believe they are. That some of y'all could be a tad bit different, which means you could most likely fall in that term of the idea of a mutant. And matter of fact, one of the congressmen in the room, the same one who had accused Reed for being the reason why the bad guys were arriving in this meeting, is actually 15% mutant in a way, because genetics are not as normal as a regular human. And so you have Reed saying, are you normal? Are you a power being? Do you also have to work for the government? That's the problem with this law. There's too many questions unanswered, and you guys just want to throw it out there and see what it does. And that's not okay at all. And so after this meeting, you have Reed and the Fantastic Four being able to have Congress to shelf this idea for the time being. But don't worry, it will come back very soon. But after the meeting, you did have our heroes say, you know what? We got to figure out where this device exactly came from. Now, when it comes to Reed, he was able to work on the device very quickly to figure out that it came from some location. And so then you have our heroes head over to that location. Now, once they do arrive, well, they're confronted by Dr. Doom. Now, something else I do want to mention is that when it comes to most of the heroes in Acts of Vengeance, they have no idea that why these different bad guys are coming after them for. They have no idea why. We know why, because of Loki in his inner circle, but not our heroes. And so you have Doom say, listen guys, the reason why you were being attacked by some D-list characters is because I am now working with a group of people who believe that the best way to get rid of heroes was to throw out characters they don't usually fight against. That's why you saw the Shocker or, Plant Man, those kind of characters, hoping to catch you guys off guard to hopefully get rid of you guys. Now you have the Human Torch go out of his way to try to burn Dr. Doom, except when he tries, he only kills off a Doom bot. The real Doom was not there at all. But now the Fantastic Four knows that what's happening behind the scenes. Now, after you had the Human Torch get rid of the Doombot, you then had a Super Adaptoid appear. Now, a Super Adaptoid is a robot that has the ability to copy other people's powers. Now, what you're seeing right now is the original Fantastic Four. You got Reed Richards, you got the Human Torch, you got the Invisible Woman, you got the Thing, you got the original four. But here's the catch though. When it comes to Ben Grimm, he was actually going through a phase where he was just a regular guy. But when he wanted to be the Thing, he would wear a suit that would give him thing-like abilities. And so when it comes to the Super Adaptoid, it was only gaining the abilities of 3 of the 4 Fantastic Four, not Ben Grimm, because Ben is in a regular suit. And so this robot does not have the strength and durability of the Thing. And so you have Ben Grimm being able to use his suit's strength as a way to take down the robot. And then once he does that, that really does wrap up today's video. And you have our heroes move on with their lives. And so this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.